Hi, Deanna. Thanks for joining me today.
Hi, Alex. So good to see you.
I know.
Yeah.
So I was just thinking we've known each other 14 years?
Something like that.
Yeah.
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 A long time.
A long time.
Mm-hmm.
And so I want to appreciate you for joining us for this informal chat.
Yes.
But I want you to introduce yourself for the audience and tell us a little bit about yourself.
All right. So my name is Diana Campoamor. I was the founding president of Hispanics in Philanthropy. So I worked in philanthropy for a number of years, focusing in particular on how to invest in Latino communities. Afterwards, I reinvented my life, and I now serve as the chair of the Public Foundation for San Francisco Schools, SPARC. I serve on a number of boards. I'm a consultant and an individual donor. So that's me.
No, very impressive. And I also will share that, you've been a longtime mentor of mine and also obviously a friend.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very special for me to spend time with you.
Well, thank you. It's
Yeah.
always good to spend time with you.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm Alexandra Kino Fike, and I work at Equal Rights Advocates. I'm an attorney, but quickly realized, as you remember, that the corporate attorney life was not for me and it was not fulfilling. And you were very instrumental in helping me to find, a new career, a new path that was much more aligned with my values. So very grateful for that. But I worked with you at Hispanics in Philanthropy for a while.
Mm-hmm.
And then I also decided to pursue a career in philanthropy. And so I went on to I worked at the East Bay Community Foundation.
Mm-hmm.
And now I'm at Equal Rights. And I think it's an interesting time to be there. But today we're going to be talking more about our personal immigration stories and how it's connected to the times and what we're hearing and learning. So I'd love to learn again or hear again your immigration story.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, it's interesting. In the 15 years that we have known each other, so much has changed. What hasn't changed is that, this is a country of immigrants. The only people who are not immigrants are the people who were here when the rest of us arrived, the Native American communities. And yet, this issue of undocumented, migration has become the top issue for one political party, for sure, and has become, has led to this country scapegoating people like you and I, and the Asian community, the Somalian community, the Arab community, as if somehow we don't belong here. And I'm mindful that this has, a repercussion, first of all, in our individual lives. Our individual lives. The people who day in and day out have families, have jobs, have dreams. But it also impacts our narrative about who we are, our identity as a country. It impacts our economy, which is clearly going down the tubes. And it impacts the influence that the United States has over the rest of the world, and certainly in the American hemisphere, where many of us, have an identity as people who are both Americans, but in my case, Cuban, in your case, Salvadorian.
But remind me, how did you come here? At what age?
So, in the late 1950s, there was a civil war in Cuba, the Cuban Revolution. And my family had residence in the United States. And so early on, my parents decided that we would come to the United States for what they thought was going to be 1 or 2 years.
Mhm.
They thought, there was a revolution and, there was violence on the streets and, but things would change. So when we came to the United States, I expected that I was going to be here to, learn English, which was a skill that everyone has to have, right? Live somewhere else, which was going to be enriching, and then eventually go back to Cuba. But as we know, the Cuban Revolution is now more than 60 years in power. And when I came to the United States, we came, as many immigrants do, to a place where we had family. And that place was New Orleans. This is New Orleans in the 1960s. And New Orleans, even though, there were laws in the books that were, that prohibited segregation in education and in restrooms and public facilities and in buses. New Orleans de facto was a segregated town. It was a place, where Black people still sat in the back of the bus. And when my parents went to register me at the nearest public school, there were no Black children at that school. And in fact, my parents were asked for an affidavit, validating that I was white in order to be admitted to that public school.
Wow.
So that was the early 1960s. And of course, the country has moved forward quite a bit. There have been, there's the civil rights movement, the women's movement, the farm workers movement, any number of movements that have pushed us to greater human rights. Unfortunately, we're taking a step back.
Yeah.
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 So I know a little bit about your story, but, for the purposes of this program,
Yeah.
we want to talk about it.
Yeah. It's, I think there's similarities between our stories, but also a lot of differences. And also, we both arrived to different times in the U.S.
Right.
But mine was not at all a voluntary immigration. I was born in El Salvador in the late 70s when the Civil War was exploding. And my parents were involved in the left-wing organizing movements. And, tragically, my biological father, my Salvadoran father, was forcibly disappeared from our home when I was about almost 2. And then that totally changed the trajectory of my life. My mother, after she received death threats and after unsuccessfully trying to find him, we fled to the U.S. And we, unlike most Salvadorans, though, we were lucky. She was of upper middle class and was able to come with papers. So we had visas. Probably in her mind, she thought it was temporary also, because we literally came with just a couple of suitcases. But we arrived, and it was we were welcomed by the Catholic San Francisco Solidarity Movement. We actually were in pseudo hiding for the first 6 months. My mom used a fake name. I was enrolled in the San Francisco schools with my mom using her fake name. And, and we slowly began to integrate. But it was a time, the U.S. was, I think, at that time, especially the Bay Area, they were more welcoming of immigrants than perhaps other regions. But also we didn't have the same issues of segregation that you did. At least not blatantly, right? It was not in my face. And I lived a very privileged life as a kid growing up as an immigrant kid. My mom remarried to a white American. So I immediately got access to some things that perhaps other immigrant kids from El Salvador didn't.
Right.
But it wasn't until I was a teenager that I realized, I am seen as different. and I can't fully ever integrate. And that was when, Prop 187 came on the scene. And you probably remember this.
Of course.
You were obviously an adult.
Yeah.
But I was about 14 or 15 when that happened. And then I remember, thinking, wow, if I had been born just, a little bit different, of lower class, and my parents didn't have papers, this would be happening to me. So here we, fast forward, we're here now in this era, and it's bringing back a lot of, I think, memories of that time. But I'm curious what you think is the difference between what we're living now as immigrants versus what you might have experienced as an immigrant throughout the years.
Well, there definitely, times throughout, my childhood. I mean, I remember my family moved from New Orleans to Minnesota. My father was an architect, and he, and like your family, my family was a middle class, professional family. And we, and so, I arrived at this junior high school in the suburbs of St. Paul, Minnesota. And the guy, sitting next to me said, so what school did you transfer from? And I said, and I didn't transfer from I'm from Cuba. And he said, really? Oh my God. So do they have potato chips in Cuba?
I remember that.
Excuse me. Most kids didn't know where Cuba was, geography and the whole thing. But, I think what is different now, well, I felt different then. To some extent, I still feel different now. But I was not afraid. I was not afraid in school. I think right now in the San Francisco public schools, we have 648 kids in deportation hearings,
Kids.
The kids, children from the schools, taken from the school, even though San Francisco schools are a sanctuary school. San Francisco is a sanctuary city.
Right.
There are people who are afraid. I was not afraid at that point, in my life. I knew that I was different. I knew, that I had a different sense of myself and my family. But what is terrifying right now is the blatant human rights abuses that we are seeing, and that is being validated by our own government. It's unprecedented in, the more than 60 years that I have lived in the United States. And I think there has always been this sense of othering. When I arrived in the United States, the others were African Americans, or the others, here in the Bay Area were Asian Americans. So it changes. Who is the other? Women have always been, the second-class citizens, the ones that, do all the work, make less money than anyone else, But there was a feminist movement. There is a feminist movement. Equal rights advocates is still here doing this important work, defending gender justice and, changing laws so that we can accomplish, what the Constitution gives us, right? But it's at this point in our history, I am afraid.
Yeah.
I am afraid for my granddaughters. I am afraid for my family. I am afraid for, the people in many other places outside of San Francisco who don't have the support from their communities. At the same time, I'm inspired. I'm inspired by the people in Minnesota. Most of them, 75% white.
Yeah.
Those people went out because of their conscience.
Yeah.
And so my hope is that in the long arc of history, we will see these reversals of progress be changed.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree that this is a unprecedented level of fear in the immigrant community. We've always had raised by La Migra. And I remember undocumented colleagues and friends warning of the raids, but it was never this violent in some ways, and it wasn't. It didn't feel so close. I think they didn't invade your homes like they do now. They would invade workplaces, but they wouldn't, stalk you on the street. They wouldn't, storm your door. And so for a lot of us, especially those of us who came from war and violence, this era of violence, the state-sanctioned violence, I will say, is really traumatic.
Yeah.
And
I agree.
And especially for a child of someone who was taken from their own home. My father was literally dragged out of our home into a pickup truck, and we never saw him again.
Yeah.
And you see these images of people being dragged out of their cars, people being dragged out of their homes. And it hurts me. It hurts my heart, because I know a lot of immigrants are fleeing war-torn countries, and they're here because they're trying to remake their lives. They're trying to provide for their kids. And they don't have resources to mental health services. So this is just, it's like doubling the trauma, and it's unnecessary. At the end of the day, this kind of violence is not necessary. And it's absolutely cruel, especially when it's targeting children. And, that case of Liam Ramos, it epitomizes the cruelty of this administration. And I mean, it's been happening. Cruelty towards children and child migrants has been happening under other administrations, Democrat too. But this is a whole new level.
Exactly.
And I personally have never felt, under threat in this country until this year. And when I started to see migrant moms or brown-looking moms who looked like me and were driving minivans like I do, and happened to be in the wrong neighborhood at the wrong time and being dragged from their cars. Citizens being detained for a few days. And so, I still have sometimes have sleepless nights of being detained without access to my children. And, and I walk around constantly with my passport. It's in my bag right now. I don't go anywhere without my passport anymore. And that's insane to me.
Yeah.
It's absolutely insane.
Absolutely.
I feel like I'm reading a novel, or not even a novel, a history clip from, Nazi Germany.
We're under a very repressive regime, where people are afraid for any number of things. And, I mean, the underlining message is racial.
Yeah.
Let's face it.
Yeah.
When we're talking about immigrants, we're talking about people of color. We're not, and also, Afro-descendant and, Arabs. We're talking about all of those who are not, Anglo-Saxon, white, folks. There's an effort afoot to demonize, those of us who are not like, the white immigrants from South Africa who were brought by, the administration. Because somehow they were being discriminated in South Africa. So there's clearly a continuation of the polarization between, people of color who do all the work and, white people who have all the money. And the wealth gap, of course, continues to get, bigger and bigger, as we know. Elon Musk is about to become a trillionaire, the first trillionaire in the world. And, and prevalent thought, in a particular, group of people with lots of money is that, this is okay. And it's sad because it's not okay. So it's going to take all of us to make sure that we push back. And I do believe that we will. And that in the end, history goes in one direction.
Yeah.
And that's towards the direction of more rights, more humanity, more equality.
Yeah. Yeah.
And not in the other direction. I think this is a momentary step back, but it's going to take everything that we got,
Yeah.
to amend this, to reverse it.
Definitely.
Yeah. Yeah. And, one of the things that we were talking about earlier, Alex, is the fact that, American foreign policy in many ways has, precipitated many of these migrations.
Yeah.
In the same way that European colonization, precipitated, migration, of Indians and Pakistanis, to England, and Latin Americans to Spain, and Arabs to France, and so on. So American foreign policy has done quite a bit, to force people from their homes, and to have them come to the United States. Certainly the case in the wars in Central America.
Oh yeah. No, I think a lot about that. That just irony upon irony.
Mm-hmm.
That at the end of the day, most immigrants didn't choose to come here.
Right.
They were forced either by economic upheaval and distress, or by violence in their country of origin. And I often want to just scream out into the others, I could have had a whole other life. I should have been Salvadoran with my family intact. And I would have been able to keep my Spanish. And so that's often something that Latino immigrant kids struggle with, that we lose our Spanish or it becomes worse. And so we don't belong fully in the culture and the country of where we were born, but we don't fully belong in the country where we've landed.
Right.
So we're in this kind of weird Netherland.
Yeah.
And so, but anyway, back to the foreign policy that just, in the 80s, so many Americans don't realize that in the 80s, this government was pouring, millions and millions, billions of dollars into Central America to prevent what it was going to be this communist red wave, because they were so freaked out after Cuba that they were determined. They were absolutely determined to prevent what happened in Cuba to spread anywhere else. So they invested in very questionable and cruel regimes, not democratic regimes, to prevent that. And of course, the result was total political instability. It was complete violence. Americans don't know about the genocide of Guatemala, where they completely annihilated the indigenous population. They don't know about the massacre of El Mozote in El Salvador, where a whole town was completely, children, men, women, everyone was murdered. And the bodies were buried. The town was razed. The town was literally erased until some journalist happened, to dig it out.
Yeah.
They don't know about, the disappearances of Chile or Argentina, and, the dirty war. But this country was determined to just make sure that this hemisphere belonged to it, and that it was, under its purview. They were willing to pay, look the other way. And then, of course, we come here, and the country sometimes makes us feel like, well, we didn't really want you here. You're taking jobs from us.
Yeah.
And it's happening again, once again.
Yeah. And I think, most Americans don't realize, well, first of all, that the United States does not own the title America. Okay.
Yeah.
The Americas are the continent. I remember, when, as a child, when I came here, someone said, "But you're not American." I said, "Excuse me? Of course I'm American. Cuba is in the Americas. The only Americans are not people from the United States, people from El Salvador, or from Mexico, or from Chile. We are all, the entire hemisphere is the Americas." And it wasn't until, the wars in the late 19th century, in the 1895s and so on, when this imperialist, way of thinking coined the word American. Up until that time, It was called the Republic, the United States. And then we decided we were America. And it would be wonderful if we were America in a good way.
Yeah.
In a way that included everyone else in the hemisphere.
Yeah.
In a way that, expanded human rights and democracy. In a way that, showed the way towards a more equitable economy.
Yeah.
And, where we didn't have the wealth disparities that we're seeing today.
Yeah.
So, yes, we have to change, the way we do policy in the Americas.
Yeah.
And we have to redefine what it is, to be an American.
I totally agree.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. And I guess, so then what are some points of a future solution or characteristics of a future solution that you think might actually fly?
Mm-hmm.
We've seen a lot of different bills go through Congress to create pathways, but you've traveled the world and you've seen other models. Are there things that you think the U.S. should be adopting to create a better system for immigrants?
Well, there's any number of of bills that would legalize people who have been here for a certain period of time. Certainly the DACA kids. But I think the main thing is we need comprehensive immigration reform, that acknowledges that, our economy needs workers.
Yeah.
And, at every level. I'm not talking just about farm workers. I'm not talking, just about the bottom rung of the jobs in America. The Silicon Valley uses top echelon, foreign workers. The number 2 person at Meta, the person who replaced Sheryl Sandberg, is from Spain. And, we don't talk about those people as being undocumented. Those people get papers, they have lawyers. Poor people usually don't have access to lawyers. And those who do, are usually under tremendous, pressure. So it's an unequal system. I think there's a range of possibilities, but the first thing that we need to do, is to have a narrative that supports that. And we need to have political parties and political candidates that, are promoting that.
Yeah.
Instead of running away from it, because vilifying immigrants gets you votes.
Yeah. No, I think any narrative that's going to win or any bill, a potential bill that might have teeth, really does need to lean into, the economic power that immigrants bring to this country. And that's really for me, that's also, it underscores why what's happening right now is it's not about money. It's or not about economics. It's completely about the fear of the other and about race.
Right.
And I mean, if you look at the data, immigrants really actually contribute way more in terms of tax dollars and contributions to our public systems than they take. If it wasn't for immigrants, our social security system would be in serious trouble. And boomers, would be in very serious financial trouble.
That's right.
Because we also have an aging population.
That's right.
We know all the data shows that people are not having kids or less kids.
Yep.
And so if I was looking at this interesting Brookings Institute graph where they were saying that if we keep at this current level of immigration detentions or restrictions, our population will actually decrease significantly in the next 20 years. And that's a huge red flag for the economy, not just because of, public services and contributions, but also immigrants are consumers.
That's right.
We know this.
That's right.
And so this whole, lie that's been told around well, we'll get jobs back for American-born Americans.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lie,
Mm-hmm.
because if those immigrants go, who's going to buy your products?
Yeah,
Who,
absolutely. Yes,
who's
yes.
going to buy? Who's going to,
Mm-hmm.
there's actually real economic challenges right now in the heartland because
Mm-hmm.
migrant workers aren't showing up or
That's
they've all
right.
been deported.
That's
In
right.
industries like the meat
Yeah.
industry,
Mm-hmm.
the farming industry is suffering.
That's right.
Agriculture, and then caregiving is probably going to be next to suffer because that's the majority of folks who work in especially elder caregiving.
Just taking care of our young people,
Yeah.
of our babies. So
Our
women
old people.
and old people.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's mostly Filipinas, Latinas, Haitians, immigrant women.
Yeah.
And I think a lot too about the disproportionate impact of these policies on women.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what are your thoughts on what's happening to migrant women right now?
They're the most vulnerable of all, because, again, they're the ones that are working for less money, taking care of the family. In some cases, taking care of, or having to deal with, male partners, who are not always, kind and supportive. Um, and they are the most invisible
Yeah.
among us. So I think we all need to speak out on behalf of immigrant women. It is shocking that a couple of weeks ago there was this video of this immigrant woman at the airport
Here at SFO?
with her 10-year-old daughter and 10 ICE people detained her, at the airport as people, were taking videos of what was going on.
Yeah.
That is shocking. It's just
And she was in the middle of a legal
it's right.
adjudication of her status.
Exactly.
There was no
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
No, and I think also about immigrant women in the workplace
Mm-hmm.
who right now are probably even more scared of reporting workplace violence or harassment.
Right.
There's a lot of immigrant women face a lot of inequities in terms of power in the workplace.
Mm-hmm.
And so it makes me happy and proud that ERA is actually one of the few organizations that's really thinking about those kinds of workers and putting forth bills here in California to try to ensure that workplaces are safer for immigrant women, especially in terms of violence.
Exactly.
And harassment and equal pay.
Yeah.
But it's just totally unnecessary, totally inhumane and unnecessary.
Yeah.
But here we are.
So, I think it's at every level of the spectrum, we need reform and we're going to get there. I think, the fact, for example, that Emily Gregory won the state congressional seat in West Palm Beach, I think is a great story. I think, the number of women running for office, this year was a terrific story. I think Sarah McBride, a trans woman, it's a great story. We have to continue to tell a different narrative. It starts with the story in our head, the story in our books, the story on TV, the story on Netflix, and the laws that reflect those stories.
Yeah.
And the political, the political class that gets to write that story into law.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
That feeds into, I think, maybe one of the last questions I have for you is what gives you hope? And before you answer that, though, I want to share my perspective, which is, I think, it's telling to me that the Super Bowl halftime artist was a Latino, a Puerto Rican man.
Yes, yes.
Who, I believe is a feminist and also a queer ally.
Mm-hmm.
And he that show was just a perfect like lesson in how to tell symbolic lessons and symbolic stories.
Mm-hmm.
He really put in the main one of the the biggest shows that's watched in this country, our stories, front and center. And it was a story of diverse Latinidad, Afro Latinos, there were Central Americans profiled, Mexicans profiled.
Yeah.
The music was profiled. The language, he spoke and sang only in Spanish. That was a first.
Mm-hmm.
And then he made a nod to the fact that all of us are Americans at the end. That was so powerful for that to be on this huge, and the U.S. was the last country he named. But I think he and other artists, really, it's the artists I want to lift up, who are telling and showing with their work that, these different stories of what it means to be American, what it means to be Latino.
Yeah.
And more, white Americans are consuming this, and this is part of pop culture.
Exactly.
And so I think there's hope, right? If somebody like that can tell that kind of a story in a halftime show, one of the whitest sports out there, like if that story can make it there, then maybe, maybe we have hope. The other thing that gives me hope is the fact that more and more we're seeing more and more, multicultural children, and this country is becoming more brown, whether it likes it or not. So seeing my own kids who are half Latino, half white, really be so proud of Latino culture is giving me hope. But what about you?
So many things, give me hope. The Bad Bunny halftime. By the way,
Bad Bunny, llámame.
So he has a foundation that is in Puerto Rico. The Good Bunny.
Qué chistoso.
Sense of humor gives me a sense of hope.
I know.
That we can have a sense of humor. That in the middle of the storm, we can light our own lives and that of others. I think all of that. A number of political, young political candidates give me hope. Your generation, the work that ERA is doing, the work that we're doing in San Francisco public schools and in other public schools to support immigrant families and to validate them and to continue to grow our curriculum, our multicultural, multilingual curriculum, which, families, regardless of their racial background, I think, understand is a plus. I think, that is giving me hope. The No Kings marches, are giving me hope.
Yeah.
The satirists who make fun of, those in power who consider themselves so all powerful and important. We have to keep in mind that what seems so so powerful and so recalcitrant right now is one moment in history.
That's right.
Things are changing every day. Yeah. Every day you wake up and it's another opportunity. We all have to wake up every morning and say, what can we do to further our own rights and the rights of the people who come after us?
Right.
And sometimes it's, small things. Sometimes it's, going to the demonstration or writing a letter or, sending $5 to our candidate.
Not buying Amazon.
Not buying Amazon. Exactly. resisting, corporate culture that supports the regime. Um, you know, supporting each other personally, in whatever way we can. I
Yeah.
think all of that is important, and I'm very hopeful for the 2026 elections.
Yeah.
I'm very hopeful. I think we're going to see a big change. And it's hard to think about this now, but you know, um, in 4 or 5 years, we're still left with, the chaos and the disaster that this administration has created, because that doesn't get resolved like that by executive action. We're still going to be holding the bag for that. But this is going to be over.
Yeah.
All the threats about, changing voting laws, about redistricting, all the change about, there's no way that you can undo the changes.
Yeah.
It's not true.
Yeah.
It's not true.
And, maybe the silver lining in all of this is that, we're all of the complete destruction of these public agencies and these old ways of doing things. Maybe it's a chance for us to dream bigger and better.
Yeah.
And to actually build systems and laws that are truly centered in women and immigrants and basic human decency. So I think it's up to us also to take this chance to really organize and demand real radical change.
Yeah.
And so that when we rebuild, it's not just putting Band-Aids and trying to put back what we had before. We have a chance to do it, create something even better.
Right.
So, what does a healed America look like for you? United States, excuse me. What does a healed United States look like for you?
For me, we have a woman president. I am now in my 70s, and I will live to see a woman president, and a woman of color, president. I will live to see a multiracial, multicultural, multilingual society. I will see an economy that is good for the majority of people, not just, for a few gazillionaires. I will see stories of the variety of people in the United States, and a sense that you can be both an American and a Cuban, that you can be a Salvadorian and an American, that we're all part of a larger continent, and a safe place where there's less violence and where there's more equality.
Yeah, beautiful. I want to be there. For me, I think, well, first, I wouldn't have to walk with my passport anymore, and I wouldn't, thousands of millions of other immigrants wouldn't be waking up with this fear. And then, obviously, I totally agree that it'll be a multilingual, multiracial society. But also it will be, I think, my ideal healed United States, it'll be a country that is not afraid to face its history, its past. I really believe that until this country fully addresses its original sins, that is the genocide of the native people here and the enslavement of millions and millions of Africans, and how we basically built an economy off forced labor. I don't think we're really going to heal until we address those original sins. So that's just, I think in my ideal US, we will be talking about those things without so much angst. It's just, we have to face it. Mhm. Yeah, that's it for me, really. Yeah.
That sounds great.
Yeah.
I think we've got our work cut out
Oh,
for
yeah.
us.
Yeah, we do.
Indeed.
Yeah. Thank you so much for joining me, Deanna. I love spending time with you, and I feel like we could talk about a lot of these issues for hours.
Hmm.
But it's always such a pleasure to be with you.
And I love being with you. So keep up the good work.
You too.